The galactic trade hub was always busy. Lights shone from every corner, voices from dozens of alien languages mixed in the air, and ships came and went without pause. Commander Elias Trent had been here for only 2 days, but already he felt the constant movement pulling at his mind. This place was the heart of interstellar diplomacy, and tonight, he was returning to his quarters after another long meeting. Elias stepped into the elevator on level 42, rubbing the back of his neck. He had been smiling and nodding all day, negotiating with alien ambassadors, and his face felt tired from the effort. He was just about to press the button for his floor when a voice spoke softly behind him. "Is this lift heading to the diplomatic wing?" He turned and saw her. Tall, graceful, and unlike any species he had met before, the alien woman stepped in without hesitation. Her skin shimmered in deep blue and violet tones, shifting gently like ocean waves. Her eyes were bright silver, almost glowing in the soft elevator light. "Yes," Elias replied politely, pressing the button. "You must be from one of the new delegations." She gave a slight nod. "Kira Valen, of the Marin Council." Her voice was smooth, but her posture was formal. She was clearly used to keeping a professional distance. The elevator doors closed. A soft hum filled the small space as they began to ascend. Then, without warning, the lights flickered. The hum stopped. The elevator jerked to a halt, sending both of them stumbling slightly. Elias frowned. "That's not normal." Kira tilted her head, her silver eyes narrowing. Something disrupted the power, and it was not accidental. Words made Elias glance at her sharply. "You can tell. I can feel electromagnetic shifts," she explained. "This one feels controlled, targeted." A silence settled between them, heavy and uncertain. The small cabin seemed even smaller, with the lights dim and only a faint glow from the emergency strips above. Minutes passed. No sound came from outside. Elias reached for the emergency comm panel, but it was dead. He gave a quiet sigh. "Looks like we're not calling for help." Kira's gaze stayed fixed on the sealed doors. Her breathing was slow, deliberate. Elias noticed the way her chest rose and fell in 3 short rhythms, then a pause. He guessed it was normal for her species, but it gave her an air of calm control. He, on the other hand, was already calculating possibilities. If this is sabotage, it could be connected to the summit. There were already rumors some factions didn't want this meeting to happen. Kira said nothing at first. Her eyes shifted in shade, becoming darker blue. Elias guessed it was her version of concern. The silence became heavier. He could hear the faint creak of the elevator cables and the slow, steady sound of her breathing. Their differences were obvious to beings from opposite corners of the galaxy. Stuck in a metal box with no way out, to distract himself from the stillness, Elias asked, "So, what's your homeworld like?" For the first time, her eyes softened. Blue oceans that stretch further than the horizon. Cities grown from living coral, shaped over centuries. We share our home with creatures as large as your ships. The air smells of salt and blossoms. Her words painted a vivid picture in his mind, a world alive and breathing. "Sounds beautiful," he said honestly. "And Earth?" she asked. Elias smiled faintly. "It's complicated. Green forests, wide deserts, endless skies. We've had our share of troubles, but we keep going. Humans are stubborn, I guess." Kira tilted her head again, studying him. "That, I believe." The minutes stretched into an hour. Still no sound of rescue. The air grew warmer, the lights dimmer. Elias leaned against the wall, feeling the slow press of time. Every now and then, he caught Kira's gaze, quick, assessing, as if she was trying to read him the way one might read a storm on the horizon. Something about being trapped like this began to change the air between them. It wasn't just discomfort anymore, it was awareness. They were strangers, yet forced into a closeness neither had chosen. Every word they spoke, Every glance they exchanged felt heavier in the silence. Finally, Elias broke it. If we're stuck here a while, we should figure out how to get out ourselves. Her silver eyes gleamed faintly. Agreed. But we will need to trust each other. That simple sentence hung in the air between them. Trust was not easily given between two different worlds. But here, in the dim light of a stalled elevator, trust might be the only thing that could get them both out alive. Asterisk. The elevator was quiet, except for the faint hum of emergency power. Elias and Kira stood on opposite sides, both aware of the other's presence, yet uncertain of what to say next. In the soft glow from the ceiling strips, they studied each other with quiet curiosity. Kira noticed the way Elias carried himself, shoulders back, eyes alert, but not aggressive. His clothes were simple, yet well kept. She could tell he was a man used to responsibility. What puzzled her most was the warmth in his gaze. Most beings she met in diplomatic halls kept their eyes cold, careful, and unreadable. Humans, she thought, were different, and Elias, meanwhile, found himself intrigued by her subtle movements. Every small shift of her posture seemed deliberate, like a dance meant to convey meaning. The way her skin shimmered in slow waves was mesmerizing. He had heard Marin physiology was unique, but seeing it up close was something else entirely. It was like watching sunlight reflect on the ocean. Trying to break the stillness, Elias asked, "You've been to the station before?" "No," Kira replied, her voice low but clear. "This is my first time beyond my sector. My council sent me to observe the summit, to learn, and to judge." "Judge?" Elias raised an eyebrow. "Yes, we decide which alliances are worth building. We do, not rush into friendships." Her honesty was refreshing, even if it carried a hint of distance. "Fair enough," Elias said with a small nod. "Humans can be unpredictable." Kira's lips curved slightly, the closest thing to a smile he had seen so far. "So I've been told." A faint vibration passed through the elevator floor, making them both glance upward. Somewhere above, a metallic clang echoed. Elias frowned. "Could be rescue crews," he said, though his tone carried little certainty. Kira tilted her head, eyes narrowing. No, that sound was not from above. It came from the outer wall. Something is moving along the cables. Elias looked at her sharply. "You can hear that?" "I can feel it," she replied simply. "The metals vibrate differently when touched." For a moment, Elias wondered how many other abilities her species possessed. He had read files on the Marin, but nothing in them had described sensing vibrations like this. The air grew warmer. Elias unfastened the top of his uniform jacket, letting it hang loosely. Kira noticed the small detail, a sign that the human was beginning to feel discomfort. She, too, was aware of the stale air, but Marin lungs processed oxygen differently. She would last longer than most species, yet even she could feel a slow heaviness settling in. "What will you do when you return home?" Elias asked, trying to keep the atmosphere from feeling suffocating. "That depends on what I find here," Kira said. "If your people prove themselves trustworthy, I will speak in favor of trade and cooperation. If not, we will turn away." Her answer was straightforward, but her gaze lingered on him for a moment longer than necessary. Elias caught it, though he pretended not to react. "Instead," he said, "then I hope I make a good impression." Something flickered in her silver eyes. Amusement, perhaps. First impressions are improving. It was a small victory, but Elias felt it nonetheless. They were no longer just strangers trapped in a box. They were starting to understand each other, piece by piece. Minutes stretched on. The distant noises outside faded, replaced by a deeper, more unsettling silence. Kira finally spoke again. "Humans, you are not seasonal beings, are you?" "Seasonal," Elias echoed. "Where I come from, emotions shift with the tides. Some months we are drawn to others. Some months we seek solitude. You seem constant. Elias thought about it. Maybe. We're not controlled by tides, but our moods change for other reasons. Sometimes it's the people around us. Sometimes it's just life. Kira considered this, her head tilting slightly. I wonder if that makes you stronger or weaker. Elias smiled faintly. Depends on the day. The warm air pressed heavier now, and Kira finally stepped closer. To the wall, where the ventilation panel sat. She placed her palm against it, closing her eyes. Airflow is blocked, likely intentional. Someone wanted this elevator out of use, and its passengers. Her statement sent a cold ripple through Ilyas's thoughts. This wasn't a simple accident. Whoever was behind it might not want them leaving alive. He met her gaze, and in that moment, the polite diplomacy between them shifted into something else. Mutual understanding, mutual caution. The tension in the air was no longer just about discomfort. It was about the growing realization that they might be in real danger. We'll figure this out, Elias said firmly. Kira's silver eyes studied him for a long moment before she gave a slow nod. Then we start now. The air inside the elevator was heavier now, as if the walls themselves were pressing in. Elias could feel a thin layer of sweat forming at the back of his neck. Kira, however, remained calm, her posture straight, her breathing slow and measured. Yet, even in her stillness, he could sense she was alert to every sound. Every vibration. Elias crouched near the control panel, examining the dead display. He tapped it with the edge of his hand, but nothing came alive. No power feed, he muttered. Even the emergency systems cut off. That means someone did not just disable the lift, Kira said softly. They wanted to make sure no one inside could call for help. Elias turned to face her, the dim light casting shadows across his features. You're sure this isn't just a technical failure? Her silver eyes shifted slightly darker. I am sure. This was deliberate. Her certainty made the situation feel sharper, more dangerous. Elias leaned back against the wall, thinking quickly. He had been in dangerous situations before, tense negotiations, even near hostile encounters, but this was different. Here, there was no way to walk out, no open door to escape through. They were at the mercy of whoever had done this. Kira stepped closer to the side wall, placing her palm flat against the cold metal. There, she whispered. What? Elias asked. She kept her eyes closed, listening. Movement. Not far above us. Something small, mechanical. It's latching onto the shaft. Elias frowned. Maintenance drone. Possibly. Or something made to look like one. He didn't like the sound of that. He crouched by the lower access panel, fingers searching for the release latch. If someone wanted us out of the way, there might be more than one trick in play. The warm silence was broken only by a faint, rhythmic clicking from above. Elias looked up toward the ceiling hatch, where a small inspection grate was visible. The sound was moving closer, slow and deliberate. Kira's voice lowered. In my culture, when a predator is too quiet, it is because it is already close. That's comforting, Elias said dryly, earning a small flicker of amusement from her. Still, the seriousness remained. The air felt thicker now, as if the elevator had become more than a trap. It was a waiting place, a test of patience and endurance. Elias knew that if he let the tension take over, his mind would start to race in unhelpful directions. To keep focus, he asked, "What kind of enemies does your council have?" Kira hesitated before answering. "Some who wish to keep us isolated, others who fear we will side with humans, and some," her voice lowered further, "some who fear change itself." Elias nodded slowly. "Humans have those too." Kira's gaze met his, a shared understanding passing silently between them. The political games of the galaxy were different in detail, but not in spirit. A soft metallic thud interrupted the moment. Both turned their eyes upward again. The clicking sound had stopped, replaced by a low, constant hum, like a faint charge running through the walls. Kira's skin shimmered a little brighter. "Energy signature," she murmured. "Not from the station's grid." Elias narrowed his eyes. So, whatever's up there brought its own power. He felt his heartbeat quicken. That meant someone had gone to serious effort to cut them off. No random attacker would go this far. This was planned. "We need to get this panel open," he said, kneeling again by the control board. "If I can bypass the lock, maybe we can trigger the doors." Kira knelt beside him. "Show me how your circuits work. My fingers can reach smaller spaces than yours." Her tone was practical, but Elias noticed the way she leaned closer, her focus sharp. He showed her the wiring beneath the cover, explaining in simple terms where the main bypass points were. She listened intently, her multi-jointed fingers sliding into narrow gaps to connect small wires together. "Like this?" she asked. "That's it," Elias replied, watching the faint spark as the connection bridged. The panel lit briefly, then went dark again. "They're jamming the signal," Elias muttered. "It's not just the power, there's interference." Kira's voice was steady. "Then we remove the interference." Elias looked at her, half smiling despite the tension. "You make it sound so simple." "It is. We find it, and we end it." For a moment, they just looked at each other, both aware that the next steps could be dangerous. But the strange thing was, Elias didn't feel alone anymore. The alien diplomat across from him wasn't just a stranger trapped in the same box. She was a partner now, even if their alliance had formed in the most unlikely of places. He straightened up. "All right. First, we find the jammer. Then, we figure out how to shut it down." Kira's eyes glimmered in the dim light. "And perhaps, Commander, we find out who wanted us here in the first place." The hum above them continued, steady and unsettling. Whatever was waiting, they would face it together. The low hum from above had not stopped. It was like a constant reminder that something or someone was watching, waiting for the right moment. Inside the elevator, the stale air pressed heavier on both of them, and time felt slower. Elias sat with his back against the wall, knees bent, breathing in the warm, thin air. Kira remained near the panel, her long fingers still resting on the metal as if she could read the elevator's secrets through touch. For a while, neither spoke. Then, Elias broke the silence. "Feels like we've been here for days," he said, his voice low. Kira glanced at him, her silver eyes calm but sharp. "Patience is a survival skill," she replied softly. "But it is harder when there is no horizon to look at." He gave a small smile. "On Earth, we say the same thing about being at sea. Endless water, no land in sight." Her gaze softened. "I have seen oceans without end. My world is made of them. We live on floating cities grown from coral. The coral itself is alive. It breathes. It changes shape with the seasons. We share our cities with other creatures, some large enough to carry a whole home on their backs." Elias tried to imagine it. The shimmering blues and greens, the living walls, the sound of the waves beneath alien skies. Sounds like a place where people know how to adapt. Kira's tone turned quieter. "We had too. Long ago, storms destroyed many of our homes. Entire families vanished into the sea. It was then our people learned to rebuild, even in the middle of the ocean. We do not give up." There was a pause before she added, "Perhaps that is why I am curious about humans. I have heard. You do not give up either." Elias let out a short laugh. "That's true. We've had wars, disasters, even times when it looked like we might destroy ourselves. But somehow, we keep going." Kira studied him for a moment. "What kept you going?" Elias leaned his head back against the wall. "People," he said simply. "Family, friends, the ones you can't stand losing. Even when things fall apart, you keep moving for them." She didn't answer right away. Instead, her gaze lowered, and her skin shimmered faintly darker. Elias had learned enough by now to know that meant she was thinking about something personal. "Do you have family back home?" he asked gently. "I did," she replied. "My parents, gone many tides ago. I have a sister. She is younger, very curious. She always wanted to see the stars. I came here partly for her, to see what is beyond our waters." There was a fragile honesty in her voice, the kind that carried a hidden weight. Elias didn't press further. Instead, he nodded slowly, as if to say he understood. For a while, they just sat there, listening to the quiet. Strangely, the tension between them felt different now, less like strangers forced together, and more like allies sharing the same small world. Kira finally moved to sit across from him. "Tell me about your home," she said. Elias smiled faintly. "It's not as beautiful as your oceans, but it has its own charm. Forests so dense you can't see the sky. Deserts where the air shimmers with heat. And cities that never sleep, full of noise and light. My favorite place, though, it's a little cabin in the mountains. No comes, no traffic, just quiet. You can see the stars so clearly at night, it feels like you could touch them." Her eyes seemed to brighten slightly. "I would like to see that." "Maybe you will," he said before he could stop himself. The thought of showing her Earth, of sharing something that personal, surprised him. But the truth was, the more time he spent in this cramped metal box, the more he wanted her to know his world. Another faint sound echoed through the shaft, a small mechanical click from above. Both of them turned their heads toward it. The hum was still there, but now it felt more focused. "They're still there?" Elias murmured. "Yes," Kira agreed. "And they are waiting for something." Elias exhaled slowly. "Then we'd better be ready." Kira's gaze stayed locked on his for a moment, as if measuring his resolve. "Finally," she said, "humans are unpredictable. I think that will work in our favor." He gave a half smile. "Let's hope so." The silence returned, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with the unspoken understanding that, whatever happened next, they would face it together. The shared stories had built something, a thin but unbreakable thread of trust, and in a stalled elevator, trust might be the most powerful weapon they had. The still air in the elevator was beginning to feel heavy in Ilias's chest. The faint hum from above had become like a background heartbeat, steady, quiet, but impossible to ignore. He knew they couldn't just sit and wait any longer. Whoever had trapped them here had gone to great lengths to make sure they stayed put. Elias crouched in front of the control panel again, wiping his palms on his uniform trousers. "All right," he said, his tone firm. "If we can't call for help, we make our own way out." Kira moved closer, her silver eyes reflecting the dim emergency light. "Show me what you are doing. My hands can reach smaller places than yours." Elias pried the panel open with a small tool from his pocket. Inside, the wires were tightly packed, a tangle of color-coded connections. "This is the main power feed. If we can reroute the current around the jammer, we might be able to trigger the door override." Kira studied the wires, her head tilting slightly. "Which is the jammer?" "Not sure yet," Elias admitted, "but we'll know when we find a connection that doesn't belong." Without hesitation, Kira reached in, her long jointed fingers moving with precision. "Tell me which wires to touch," he pointed. "Start with the blue and silver on the left." Gently. Her fingers worked delicately, pulling the two wires together until a small spark jumped between them. The control panel flickered for less than a second before going dark again. "That's a good sign," Elias said. "Means the circuit still has some life." Kira gave a faint smile. "Then we keep going." Minutes passed as they worked, Elias guiding her, Kira moving her hands with a skill that reminded him of a surgeon. The confined space brought them closer together, their shoulders brushing occasionally. He could feel the subtle warmth radiating from her skin, warmer than a human's, almost soothing. At one point, Elias paused, noticing her expression. "You okay?" "Yes," she said, though her breathing was a little slower. "The air is thinner now, but I will manage." Without thinking, Elias reached into the side pouch of his uniform and pulled out a small, clear cylinder. "Here," he said, holding it out. "Emergency oxygen capsule. Just take a breath." Kira hesitated. "You might need it more than I do." He shook his head. "Humans can handle low oxygen a little longer. You said your people are more sensitive. Take it." Her silver eyes met his, and for a brief moment, there was no sound except the faint hum above. Then she took the capsule, pressing it gently to the base of her neck, where her species absorbed oxygen directly. A faint glow pulsed along the side of the cylinder as it delivered the air. "Better?" Elias asked. "Yes," she said softly. "Thank you." They went back to work. Finally, Kira's fingers found something unusual, a small black device wedged deep inside the wiring. "This," she whispered. "This does not belong." Elias leaned closer, his brow furrowing. "That's it. That's the jammer." Carefully, they worked together to pull the device free. The moment it disconnected, the control panel lit up in bright green for the first time since they'd been trapped. Both of them froze, glancing at the doors. No movement. Elias muttered under his breath. "Looks like we still need to force the door override." He scanned the panel, then pointed to a lever inside. "Push this down while I hold the wires steady." Kira nodded. Her hand moved to the lever, and with one sharp press, the elevator gave a low groan. The lights above flickered brighter, and the faint hum from above suddenly went silent. Elias looked up. "They know we're trying to get out. That means we must hurry," Kira said firmly. The elevator shook slightly, but then the doors opened a few centimeters, just enough to let in a rush of cooler air. Both of them breathed it in deeply, as if it was the first fresh air they'd tasted in hours. Elias slid his fingers into the gap and tried to force the doors wider, but the mechanism resisted. Kira stepped forward, placing her palms on the edges. With surprising strength, she pushed, the muscles in her arms tightening. Slowly, the doors opened far enough for them to slip through. Beyond the elevator was a dim maintenance shaft. The walls were lined with cables and pipes, and a narrow walkway stretched to the left. Somewhere far above, a faint metallic clang echoed. Elias turned to her. "We can follow the walkway to the summit chamber. If this sabotage was meant to stop the talks, we need to warn them." Kira gave a short nod. "Then we move." Together, they stepped into the shaft, the elevator doors closing behind them, with a metallic snap. The hum was gone now, replaced by the faint sound of their footsteps echoing in the narrow space. Neither said it aloud, but they both knew the truth. Escaping the elevator was only the beginning. The narrow maintenance shaft was colder than the elevator, but the air was still thin. Each breath felt like it carried less strength than the one before. Elias led the way, scanning the dim walkway for anything that might be a trap. The floor grated softly under their steps, the sound echoing up into the unseen dark above. Kira followed close behind. At first, her movement was steady, graceful, even in the cramped space. But after several minutes, Elias noticed her pace slowing. Her shoulders rose higher with each breath, and her skin's shimmer had dulled to a muted gray-blue. He stopped, turning to face her. "You're struggling." She shook her head, as if trying to deny it. "I am fine." Elias didn't believe her. "Kira, we've still got a way to go. If you pass out here, I can't carry you and fight whatever's waiting for us." She hesitated, her silver eyes flicking away. Admitting weakness was clearly not easy for her. "Finally," she said, "the oxygen here is in. My body can adjust, but it takes time." Without a word, Elias pulled the small emergency oxygen capsule from his pouch again, the same one he had given her in the elevator. He pressed it into her palm. "Use it." Her fingers closed around it, but she shook her head. "You've been breathing this air too. You need it." "I'm used to pushing through," Elias replied. and you're the one who can sense movement through the walls. I need you sharp." For a moment, they stood in silence, the dim light casting long shadows between them. Then Kira slowly brought the capsule to her neck, letting the oxygen flow. Her skin brightened slightly, the shimmer returning in faint waves. "Better?" Elias asked. She met his gaze. "Better," and grateful. They kept moving. The walkway turned sharply to the left, leading toward a vertical shaft with a ladder. From somewhere far below came the faint hum of machinery. Normal maintenance systems, Elias guessed, though it sounded distant, muffled. Above them, however, he caught something else. The slow scrape of metal against metal. Kira stopped, tilting her head. "It's following us." Ilias's jaw tightened. The thing from the elevator shaft. Yes, but slower now, watching. They exchanged a glance. Neither of them liked the idea of being hunted through these narrow corridors. Elias climbed the ladder first, his hands gripping the cold rungs. Kira followed, her movements light but careful. The air grew warmer again as they rose, a sign they were nearing the inhabited sections of the station. But the oxygen wasn't much better. Halfway up, Kira's breathing hitched. She gripped the ladder tightly, pausing for a moment. Elias looked down at her. "Kira, I'm fine," she said quickly, though her voice was strained. Without thinking, Elias climbed down 2 rungs until he was close enough to place a steadying hand on her arm. "We'll take it slow, 1 step at a time." Her silver eyes met his, and for a heartbeat, the danger faded into the background. "Humans," she murmured, almost to herself, "always carrying others when they stumble." He gave her a faint smile. "Someone's got to." They climbed the rest of the way together, and when they reached the top, Elias pushed open the hatch into a narrow service corridor. The lighting here was brighter, but the air carried the faint scent of overheated circuits. "This way," Elias said, pointing toward, the sound of voices echoing faintly in the distance. They moved quickly now, their footsteps soft against the metal floor. But just before they reached the end of the corridor, Kira's hand shot out, gripping Elias's arm. "Stop." He froze. "What is it?" She closed her eyes, her skin's shimmer slowing to almost stillness. "There's something ahead, 3 meters to the right. Mechanical, powered. A guard drone," Elias asked. "Yes, and it is not part of station security." Elias thought quickly. "Can we get around it?" "There's a maintenance hatch just before it," Kira said, pointing. "It might take us to the summit chamber." They ducked through the hatch, moving into a low, narrow passage, barely wide enough for them to crawl. The metal was cool under Elias's hands, and the sound of their movements seemed too loud in the tight space. Finally, they emerged into another vertical shaft, this one with a grated platform halfway up. Through the grating above, Elias could hear the faint murmur of voices, the summit delegates. He turned to Kira. "We're close." Her expression was unreadable, but her voice was steady. "Then we must be ready. Whoever trapped us, they will not give up easily." Elias nodded. "And neither will we." They climbed toward the light above, each step bringing them closer to the heart of the station, and whatever danger waited there. Asterisk. The grated platform creaked under Ilias's boots as he pulled himself up, Kira right behind him. The light here was warmer, a faint glow seeping through the vent slats above. Voices drifted down calm at first, then rising in argument. Somewhere, beyond those voices, the future of the summit was being decided. Elias crouched beside the vent, peering through a narrow gap. The summit chamber was directly ahead. A grand, circular hall, with polished floors and flags from a dozen worlds. Delegates sat in a ring, speaking through translation devices. At the center, the station's prime mediator tried to maintain order, but as Elias watched, his stomach tightened. A figure in the shadows, near the wall consoles, was slipping something small into a control panel. A device the same shape and size as the jammer they'd found in the elevator. "Kira," he whispered, stepping back. They're planting. Another jammer, probably to cut, comes inside the chamber. Her silver eyes sharpened. If they succeed, they can control the room. No outside help. No evidence. Exactly, Elias said. We can't let that happen. Kira scanned the vent. There's a maintenance hatch 2 levels down from here. If we drop through, we'll be right behind them. Elias hesitated. If we do that, we're not sneaking anymore. We'll be walking into the open. She tilted her head slightly. Perhaps that is what we need. A clear, undeniable interruption. Her calm confidence steadied him. All right, let's make it count. They found the hatch, a narrow square of reinforced metal, and Elias eased it open just enough to see the floor below. The figure was still at the panel, focused on their work. No one else in the chamber seemed to notice. Elias glanced at Kira, on 3. Her skin shimmered brighter, like the flash of sunlight on water. On 3. 1, 2, 3. They dropped down together, landing with a metallic thud that made the figure spin around. Gasps echoed through the chamber as the delegates turned toward the sudden noise. Elias straightened, his voice cutting through the murmurs. Everyone step away from that panel. The saboteur bolted toward the exit, but Kira moved faster. In a single graceful motion, she intercepted them, planting herself in their path. Her stance was calm, but there was no mistaking the quiet strength in her movements. The saboteur froze, silver eyes meeting silver eyes, and quickly decided not to test her. Elias reached the panel and yanked the jammer free. This was about to kill all communications in the room, just like the one in our elevator. The Prime Mediator stood, their expression a mixture of shock and relief. Explain. Elias held up the device. Someone didn't want this summit to happen. They trapped me and Envoy Kira in a stalled elevator, jammed all signals, and then tried the same here. Gasps filled the chamber again. Delegates exchanged tense glances, some leaning toward their aides to whisper. Kira stepped forward, her voice carrying a calm authority. While trapped, we discovered the jammer and removed it. We worked together, human and Marin, because trust was our only way out. That trust brought us here, in time to stop this. For a moment, the room was silent. Elias could feel every pair of eyes on them. He wasn't used to speeches, but Kira's words gave him courage. Whatever differences you think you have, Elias said, scanning the faces in the crowd, whoever benefits from dividing us, they're afraid of what we can do together. That's why they tried to stop us. The Prime Mediator's gaze moved from Elias to Kira, then to the restrained saboteur. Slowly, they nodded. Security will investigate, but for now, let the talks continue, and let this serve as a reminder of why they matter. The delegates murmured in agreement. The chamber's tension shifted, not gone, but changed. Elias could feel it in the air, the fragile beginning of something stronger. He turned to Kira, speaking low so only she could hear. We made it. Her silver eyes softened, shimmering like gentle waves. We did, and perhaps we have shown them more than they expected. Elias smiled faintly. Maybe we've shown ourselves more than we expected. For the first time since the elevator doors had closed hours ago, he felt the knot in his chest ease. They had faced sabotage, danger, and the weight of mistrust, and come out standing side by side. Whatever happened next in the summit, one thing was certain: the human and the Marin envoy would never again be strangers. The summit chamber slowly returned to order. The delegates resumed their seats, their voices quieter now, as if the near crisis had reminded them of the stakes. The restrained saboteur was escorted out by security officers, their footsteps echoing through the grand hall. Elias stood near the center, with Kira beside him. For a moment, neither spoke. They simply breathed, letting the relief sink in. Hours trapped in a metal box, cut off from the world, had ended here, in a room where their presence had stopped a greater disaster. The Prime Mediator approached, their long robes sweeping across the polished floor. "Commander Trent, Envoy, Valen," they said, inclining their head. "The summit owes you both thanks. Without your intervention, this meeting would have collapsed before the real work even began." Elias gave a small nod. "We just did what had to be done." Kira's voice was calm, but carried strength. What had to be done? Together. The mediator's gaze moved between them, and a faint smile formed. "Perhaps your cooperation is a sign for the rest of us. Humans and Marin have never worked this closely before." "Then maybe," Elias said, "it's time we start." The mediator returned to the central podium, calling the summit back into full session. As speeches began, Elias and Kira stepped aside, finding a quieter corner of the chamber. The golden light from the ceiling panels softened the sharp edges of the moment, wrapping them both in a strange calm. Kira broke the silence first. "When I boarded that elevator, I did not expect to leave it, trusting you." Elias chuckled softly. "When I boarded it, I didn't expect to be stuck there at all." She tilted her head, studying him. "Humans adapt quickly. You think fast, and you share what you have, even when it might cost you. That's just what you do when someone's with you in a fight," Elias replied. Then, more quietly, "You could have left me behind in that shaft. You didn't." Kira's silver eyes held his. "Because you were not just a human to me anymore. You were my way forward." There was no embarrassment in her tone, just simple truth. Elias felt a weight lift in his chest. This wasn't just about surviving together. It was about finding something rare, trust built under pressure, forged in danger. The summit continued for hours, but word of the elevator incident spread quickly. Delegates from other species approached them during breaks, asking about what happened. Each time, Elias noticed the same subtle shift in tone, less suspicion, more interest. By the day's end, the summit concluded with an agreement to open formal talks between the Marin Council and the Human Alliance. It was not a treaty, not yet, but it was a beginning. When the chamber finally emptied, Elias and Kira walked side by side down the long corridor toward the docking bays. The station was quieter now, the noise of the day replaced by the low hum of nighttime systems. "You'll be leaving soon?" Elias asked. Kira gave a small nod. "My council will want to hear my report, and they will have questions. I'm guessing you'll tell them we're not so bad," Elias said with a grin. Her expression softened, the faint shimmer in her skin reflecting the corridor lights. "I will tell them humans are unpredictable, but sometimes unpredictability is worth trusting." They stopped near the airlock too, her diplomatic shuttle. For a moment, neither moved. Elias extended his hand. "In case we don't meet again soon." Kira looked at his hand, then at him. Instead of shaking it, she stepped forward and placed her palm gently over his chest, a Marin gesture of respect and connection. "Until next time, Commander Trent." "Until next time," he said quietly. The airlock doors slid shut between them, but the weight of the moment lingered. As Elias turned to walk back down the corridor, he realized something. The elevator had been a trap, but it had also been the start of something neither of them could have planned. Two strangers had entered, separated by species, culture, and mistrust. They had walked out as partners, and perhaps, in time, as friends who could change the shape of the galaxy. And somewhere deep inside, Elias knew one thing for certain. If the galaxy ever tested that fragile new alliance, the memory of a stalled elevator and the trust forged within it would be enough to hold it together.